To see the Knights Templar merely as sword-wielding, devout warriors of the Middle Ages is to surrender to one of history's most magnificent and long-lasting illusions, because these fearless warrior monks laid the first foundations of modern finance and global banking, not with swords, but far more with pens, ledgers, and records of debt, operating through networks of trust and prayer. And at precisely this point, money ceased to be a simple medium of exchange and transformed into a living ecosystem intertwined with power, history, morality, and human nature. Instead of carrying gold and silver along the treacherous roads of the Crusades, the Templars developed a system based on deposit and transfer documents, enabling wealth created in Jerusalem to be withdrawn in Paris with a single piece of paper. This was not merely a practical solution, but the moment when money was separated from physical matter and bound to belief and trust. And it was here that the mental foundation of what we see today on our screens, existing only as numbers in the form of digital money, was first laid. The phrase, history, does not repeat itself, but it rhymes, ceases to be an abstract philosophy in this context, and becomes an operating law. What takes us directly to the Roman Empire is precisely this process of abstraction. Rome attempted to keep its armies and empire alive by debasing the purity of its silver coins, minting the same coin multiple times, gaining short-term relief while losing trust in the long run, driving up prices, disrupting social balances, and slowly eroding the empire from within. Today, the inflationary policies implemented through the unlimited money-printing powers of central banks, quantitative easing, and credit-inflated markets are the modern rhyme of this story. Names may change, but the mechanism remains the same. The Knights Templar awakened to this truth very early. Money is less about substance than belief. And when belief collapses, even the most magnificent structures fall. For this reason, they were not only engineers of trust, but also bankers capable of overseeing, even directing, the kings to whom they lent money. By expanding their network, they shifted the balance of power, creating a system in which kings were indebted to the Templars, meaning political authority became dependent on financial authority. And here again, history rhymed as political powers realized that debt had turned into a true weapon and eliminated the system's architects by destroying the Templars. Much as modern states and institutions sustained by debt suppress voices that question the system today. Mainstream media and classical economic narratives, themselves a deception, present the system through charts, interest rates, and technical terminology, because the financial system is in reality an illusion. A sense of prosperity is manufactured, numbers grow, asset prices inflate, yet real wealth often remains stagnant, and people believe they are becoming richer while growing more dependent. Real wealth is not the digits on a screen. Real wealth is land, production, skill, knowledge, and energy, tangible resources that can be transformed in times of crisis. Knowing that production and resources are enduring, the Knights Templar sought to control not only money but also trade routes, ports, lands, and strategic locations. Human nature stands at the very center of this cycle. In times of fear, it seeks safe havens, and in times of abundance, it takes risks, repeating the same mistakes in different forms. In Rome, this appeared as debasement and royal debt spirals. Today, it appears as inflation, credit dependency, and consumption-polished illusions of prosperity. While the system constantly whispers that you are becoming wealthier, it is in fact disciplining you through debt, because debt is an invisible chain. It does not incite rebellion, but it creates dependency and control. This narrative is not an economics lesson. It is a guide to survival. Financial education should teach not only how to make money, but also how money is used as a mechanism of power and control. The real question is not how much you earn, but how much of what you earn is real rather than a mirage offered by the system. In truth, the rise and destruction of the Knights Templar teach us this. Even those who build the system are eliminated when they overstep its boundaries, and those who endure are the ones who understand the rules and relate not to money, but to value. For this reason, protection in the modern world begins not with accumulating more money, but with grasping the moral and strategic nature of money. It continues with distinguishing whether debt is a tool or a weapon, and becomes possible by building tangible assets, skills, and resilient relationships without surrendering to digital illusions. History whispers, it does not shout. But if you learn to hear those whispers, you will see today, in the fall of Rome, modern banks in the vaults of the Templars, and today's inflation in the copper mixed into silver coins. And at that moment you realize that the illusion is the system itself. Yet for those who recognize it, history becomes a user's manual sent from beyond time. And it is precisely at this point that the real question emerges. If money is an illusion, why is this illusion so powerful? And why does almost everyone have to believe in its reality? The reason is that money is not merely a tool for calculation, it is also a collective story. As long as people believe in this story, the system functions, but when belief weakens, even the most complex structures collapse instantly. The Knights Templar knew very well how to construct this collective belief. Parchments, seals, and signatures were not just technical documents, but visual symbols of trust, and what people were convinced of through these symbols was the existence of wealth without ever seeing the gold itself. In the modern world, these seals have been replaced by digital screens, banking applications, and central bank statements, but their function has not changed. This is why the economy is governed more by perception than production, and more by psychology than mathematics. Waves of panic and euphoria in the markets are the modern manifestations of human nature, oscillating between fear and greed. It is no coincidence that throughout history, every major financial expansion has been followed by a collapse, because periods of abundance teach people to take risks, normalize debt, and mortgage the future, while crises remind them of the cost of the illusion. Just as Rome's debasement policy weakened the empire from within, today's debt-driven growth model builds societies upon invisible fragility. This fragility may look like prosperity at first glance. Homes bought with credit, growing debts, lives filled with consumption frenzy. But even if trust accumulates silently at the heart of the system, once trust is exhausted, numbers lose all meaning. What happened to the Templars was exactly this. Those who managed trust eventually became the target of that trust, and when political power perceived financial power as a threat, it eliminated it. What this shows us is that financial systems are never neutral. They generate power balances, and when this balance is disrupted, the system hardens to protect itself. In the modern world, this hardening does not occur through direct bans or swords, but through interest rates, debt conditions, credit scores, and economic obligations. People believe they are free, while in reality their choices are constrained by debt. For this reason, real protection cannot be achieved solely through individual savings or investment strategies. True protection begins with understanding how the system works, where it produces illusion, and where it ignores real value. Real value remains similar in every age: the ability to produce, the capacity to learn, the bonds formed with communities, and access to tangible resources. The true strength of the Knights Templar lay in their ability to build and manage such networks. Today, the survival guide emerges precisely here. Not rejecting money, but assigning it its rightful, limited role. Not ignoring debt entirely, but distinguishing when it is a tool and when it becomes a chain. Focusing not on numbers multiplying on screens, but on values growing in the real world. History tells us clearly that human nature remains largely the same. Systems change, names change, tools change, but human nature remains unchanged. This is why looking to the past is a defensive reflex. When you can read Rome, the Templars, and modern finance along the same line, the surprises of the future diminish. Then the economy transforms into a readable map and stops frightening you. This map is not perfect, but it offers direction. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us of this. Real wealth is not what you possess as long as the system allows it, but what keeps you standing even when the system is gone. Please subscribe for content like this.